Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining another program for the Venezuelan American Association of the U.S., and we're going to be speaking again about Venezuela. My name is Carlos Ivan Lopez. I'm a Vice President of the Venezuelan American Association of the U.S., VAUS. I would like to welcome all of you to today's conversation with Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Michael Skol on the subject. U.S. policy in Venezuela, a step backwards. We're super grateful to Ileana for taking her time to be with us, and to Ambassador Skol, who is the president of VAUS, moderating and participating in this discussion. The Venezuelan American Association of the U.S. has been promoting exchange between Venezuela and the U.S. for over 86 years. During this ongoing crisis, VAUS has been diligent in fostering discussion to spark action. We thank you all for accompanying us on our quest for knowledge and for a better future for Venezuela. Next, I will introduce you to Ileana and Mike. Ileana has an amazing background. As a native of Cuba, former U.S. Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen served for almost 3 decades as a member of Congress representing diverse areas in South Florida. She was the chairwoman of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the chairwoman on the Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa. In these roles, she led on pressing foreign policy issues, including championing the advancement of freedom and democracy for all, fighting Islamic extremism, supporting free trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea, and imposing sanctions on human rights violators in Venezuela. Her record over nearly 4 decades of public service includes fighting against tyranny and oppression, particularly in her native homeland of Cuba, as well as working diligently to support and strengthen the U.S.-Israeli strategic partnership. Representative Ros-Lehtinen served on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and was a member of the CIA's subcommittee, a strong proponent of education. She holds multiple education degrees, including a doctorate from the University of Miami, master and bachelor degrees from Florida International University, and an associate degree from Miami-Dade College. She began her career as a Florida certified teacher and then founded and served the principal of a private bilingual elementary school. Michael, Ambassador Skol, was a U.S. ambassador to Venezuela from 1990 to 1993. Besides Caracas, his other foreign policy postings were Buenos Aires, Saigon, Santo Domingo, Naples, Rome, San Jose, Bogota, and Washington, D.C. Since his retirement from the State Department, Ambassador Skol has pursued a second career in anti-corruption, counter-money laundering, and risk management services. He is principal of the binational U.S. and Colombia consortium, Skol and Cerna. Since our program today will conclude with a Q&A session, you might write any questions you have at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of the page or at the top of the page if you have an iPad. And Mike will present them to Ileana. We ask media representative attending to give credit to VAUS and as well as a speaker, of course, in any coverage of this event. Now, Mike, I'll turn the mic to you. Please go ahead. Thank you so much, Ileana, for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Well, it is a very great pleasure and honor to be talking today with a great friend of mine, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. Good afternoon, Ileana. How are you doing today?
Muy buenas tardes. Thank you, my favorite ambassador. Un placer y un honor to be on this program. I have watched many of your Zoom presentations. I've just been incognito, and I know that VAUS has done amazing programming. So I was thrilled when you finally asked me to be on here. I'm very, very happy. And what an interesting time to talk about Venezuela. Just having the midterm elections here in the U.S., lots going on around the world. Muchísimas gracias a todos que están escuchando. Thank you so much, Michael. Y gracias, Carlos Iván.
De nada, Ileana. The thrill is mutual. Well, let me begin with the title of our webinar. We called it U.S. Policy in Venezuela, a Step Backwards. Now, should that have read many steps backwards, Ileana?
What a great way to start this program. Absolutely, because and what I think that Michael and I are both referring to is it's a problem situation for the Biden administration on many fronts. First of all, he's confronting a dramatically different Latin America than the one that, let's say, President Trump had just a year ago. What has happened since then? Well, most recently, Lula got elected as the new president again of Brazil, a socialist, very much of a leftist. We've had Petro, very different from President Duque and many presidents before him, as the president of Colombia. We have a new leftist president of Chile, and we still have the axis of evil of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. So what does Biden do? He's got a border crisis that is out of control, as we've seen with Venezuelans, Cubans, Haitians, people from wherever, Mongolia, coming through the border. And so President Biden said, I'm against Title 42, the special pandemic clause that gave him the authority to shoot bring the the immigrants coming from the border back to Mexico and then to their homeland. And he said, we're not going to employ that. That's a terrible measure, until he saw that there were hundreds, thousands coming through the border. And now he's got Title 42. And that's why it's been a parade of terrible, no good days for President Biden. And he's faced with a situation where he wants to make headway through in Latin America, but it's been a conspiracy of evil forces working against them. And that's why I agree with you. It's not a step backward. It's many steps backwards. What is President Biden going to do? What will be his new policy toward Venezuela? And we've got a crazy election process here. It looks like the Republicans will be in charge of the House. Looks that way. Should have been a foregone conclusion, but it is not. And then in the Senate, the Democrats are going to be in control. So, but a very slight majority either way. What will happen with legislatively with Venezuela? Not much at all, because of a very divided Congress and an administration that doesn't quite know what to do about Venezuela. Sorry, long answer. I'll keep my answers short from then on.
Listen, you have all the time you need. Let me turn to something which is seems to be the policy solution for an awful lot of people. Talks coming up in Mexico.
Sorry, I'm in a program now. I can't talk. Sorry.
Somebody is talking. Please turn off your microphone. Question.
Yes, those
believe that
talks.
That Maduro will cede anything in these talks coming up. You know, you get people in Washington, in Europe, in Latin America, elsewhere, talking as if the talks will produce something. Now, do they believe it? Do they really believe that something will come of these talks, or is this just a cover story to allow a step back from real involvement in Venezuela? Can talks really produce anything, given particularly what's going on in the rest of Latin America, what's going on in the U.S., and what seems to be a firmer grip than ever on the part of Maduro in Venezuela? What's the point of these talks, and why do people talk about talks?
Well, I think that they're suffering from a delusional farce in their heads. Look, people are under many delusions. President Trump is thinking he could be president again. So delusion should not be underrated. It is very much in vogue these days, and it happens to anyone. But for anybody who is realistically looking at Latin America and looking at where Maduro is now politically, and how the other countries see Maduro as a leader, they have got to say he has no pressure to cede anything to the opposition. He controls all the cards, and he has now more allies than he had before. I wish I wouldn't have to say that. I wish I would say that the opposition, whether it's Guaido or Leopoldo Lopez or anyone, has the upper hand. I could have said that when they ruled the parliament and when we had some heydays of the opposition. But right now, realpolitik tells us Maduro, like any other dictator, has the upper hand, and dictators do not cede control. Why would he? When he is very much firmly in control of this country with an iron fist, jailing opponents with prison sentences. That's worked in Nicaragua, it's worked in Cuba, it's working in Venezuela as well. And he will go through the motions of looking like he's having talks, knowing that he will not cede anything. And I think it's a shame that the opposition buys into this farce. I understand that they feel the need to, because they're European allies who want to say to them, you should really be in conversations with Maduro. You have nothing to lose. Well, you have a lot to lose. You have credibility to lose. You look like a weak hand. You look like you're not understanding what's really at stake. Maduro, like all dictators, has the upper hand. He's holding all the cards. Why would he cede anything to what is a weakened opposition right now? We've had heydays where we've been very strong with the opposition, and now I think it's one of the low points. And I think that conversing with him or even giving in to him in anything by the opposition will weaken their hand even more. So, Michael, you and I very much know what these thugs are like, and they will not respond to weakness. They only respond to strength. And if you go there as an opposition leader to negotiate what little you have, he will laugh and he will win. And it's a shame to say. I want to say good things. I want to say this will work out. As a Cuban refugee who lost her homeland, fleeing communist aggression when I was only 8 years old, many, many years ago, we've seen this play out. And it's a sad scenario. But we need international support, and it's not there. It's now eroding. And we need help. We need all of these bodies to help us because the opposition is there. The Venezuelan people do not want to live under this yoke of this dictatorship. Who does not want to be free? All human beings want to be free. And Venezuelans know that they're miserable, and the person responsible for the misery is Nicolás Maduro and Chavez before him.
Well, what you're saying, I agree with. You're talking about the actual facts of what would happen in a conversation, a negotiation with Maduro. But the question is, why are so many people in Washington, in Europe and elsewhere saying you got to go to these talks? These talks are good. Is this some kind of an Instagram foreign policy, a Potemkin village social media?
What a great characterization.
Well, I'm serious.
Because I think that
it's like Twitter. Yeah. People say, let's go for negotiations, and people applaud. Negotiations, we're going to be talking, there's going to be conversations. And like Twitter and a lot of other social media, this doesn't require going any further beyond to see what the truth is. I mean, this is an example of the notion that the goal is negotiations.
That's right.
And Michael, deal is better than no deal.
Yeah. No deals. No, and it reminds me of what you and I talked about this weekend, where after my chairmanship and my years of service in Congress, I wrote observations about foreign policy. And I said, first, don't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. I use the example that we've kept our embassy out of Jerusalem for decades because, oh my gosh, if we were to do anything else, if we were to move it to Jerusalem, World War III would break out. And that has not happened. We moved it and it was fine. And secondly, don't reward bad behavior. And that's what we're doing by telling our adversaries, yeah, we want to play ball with you, we really believe you this time. And I say our adversaries need to know that actions have consequences and bad actions have bad consequences. And third, don't negotiate an agreement for the sake of getting an agreement. And that's been part of the European Union's fallacy. The content of the agreement is what should matter. But often our government seems to think that getting an agreement is important enough. It doesn't matter what it says. The Iranian nuclear deal is an example. And we need to see that it's the content of the agreement that matters, the content of the meeting. And just to meet for a meeting's sake does not advance the policy at all. And I would say another one is never overlook the human capacity for evil. And Maduro is an evil dictator, and the intention of commission of evil, as well as the banality of evil, which was committed by unthinking people. So we need to do not underestimate the capacity of evil of the Castro regime, of the Maduro regime, of the Ortega regime. And don't ignore your adversaries when they tell you they're going to kill you. And Maduro, in subtle ways, have said, I don't believe the United States. And Petro says, I don't want to deal with the United States. And we need to be realistic about these talks, about these meetings, and don't have a meeting just to have a meeting and to say, okay, check that off, because people's lives are at stake. I mean, the Venezuelan people are suffering. They don't have enough food. They don't have enough electricity. They don't have enough, my goodness, they don't even have enough gas in an oil production country. It's sad and it's pathetic, but it weakens the opposition to be in negotiation with a character who has shown no compassion for the suffering of the Venezuelan people.
Right. You were quoting from your own piece written in 2018 entitled Observations About Foreign Policy. I found that most interesting. If I were still in the State Department, I would try to carve it into the statue of somebody or other in front of that building. Anybody who wants to see the full piece, quote, Observations About Foreign Policy, we can send it out if you're.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'm proud of that because it's basics. Everything I learned in kindergarten, through life. Sometimes the basics is enough to get you through. And I have observed a lot of follies of international relations in my time, and I've condensed them into these lessons. And I think they're just as timely as when I wrote them. And meetings for the sake of a meeting is what every diplomat loves to have. We're going to go to a meeting and it's going to solve X.
Wait. Not every diplomat.
No. Sorry. There are many like Ambassador Skol who understand the nature of evil and the nature of negotiations. You have to come from a feeling of good faith and be an authentic leader who wants the best for your country. None of that applies to Nicolás Maduro.
Well, you said you learned all this in kindergarten. That must have been one terrific kindergarten, I assume.
No, I meant it's like the book. Everything I needed in life, I learned in kindergarten. Play well with others, leave the room a better place. And sometimes the basics are enough to get you through. And but our international allies, and even some here in the United States, are encouraging these talks. And I think that it will leave the opposition weaker than when they came in. Maybe they see that they have no other choice. I mean, it's very comfortable for me in exile here in the United States in a lap of luxury to criticize others. It's quite another, for the Cubans in Cuba to do what they must do to deal with this regime, to the Venezuelans, to the Nicaraguans. So I don't presume to tell the Venezuelan people what they should do any more than I would do for the Cuban people, because I am living in the lap of luxury because I have freedom, democracy, and human rights. It's not up to me. It's up to the Venezuelan people, the Cuban people, the Nicaraguan people, all of them.
The Iranian people.
The Iranian people, so many similarities. Look at what's happened there in Iran. The brave women of Iran who are standing up to this theocratic, rigid regime, who they have a morality police and telling women how they should dress and how they should observe religious practices in public, which has nothing to do with religion. It's their made up religion and not based on the Quran. So it's very sad to see, but many corollaries about the treatment of these thugs against their own people. And I say against their own people because that is the direction.
We're talking about diplomats. Let me quote another former diplomat, former Venezuelan ambassador to the U.S., Diego Aria. His comments appeared yesterday in the Inter-American Dialogue's Latin American Advisor. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but part of it. To open negotiations with a regime it had considered a usurper while recognizing Juan Guaido as interim president was a fatal blow to the interim regime and a message to the international community of shifting policy. In view of these developments, it is evident there is no need for Maduro to take steps toward democracy. And on top of these realities, the diminished political parties are providing avenues to legitimize a narco regime accepting primary elections conducted by the Maduro-controlled electoral arbiter. Meanwhile, 7 million Venezuelans have left the country. I know Diego Aria too. It's an extraordinary statement, I think.
Very thoughtful, yes. And these, so the negotiations, bad. The elections will just cement Maduro in power. And as we know, when the parliament, the opposition took control of the parliament, what did Maduro say? He abolished the parliament and said, I am the state. And I think that we need to tread very carefully, as many US leaders and international leaders may put pressure on opposition leaders to go to the negotiation table and to deal with Maduro. It's comfortable and easy for them to say that, but it's very difficult for the opposition leaders to find themselves in this position. So I worry about the opposition leaders. I worry about them in Cuba as well. You know, we've had the Cuban activists who stood up in July, massive protests, Patria y Vida, a wonderful song of the movement, and now they're facing long prison sentences. It's the same playbook with Maduro and in Nicaragua. It doesn't get as much attention, but anything they can do to silence opposition, just like in Iran, all of these thugs use a similar playbook. And I don't want to be so pessimistic, but I just worry about putting so much pressure on opposition leaders to say, hey, go there for the talks and negotiate and then say that, yes, we should have elections. Oh, no, that's a very dangerous situation for them. But I'm not there. They're the ones in a tough spot. And it's easy to criticize, and it's tougher to live there and to deal with the consequences.
Okay, let me remind people that if you want to ask a question, go to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, write your question, and we will try to get to as many as possible a bit later. Ileana, let me ask you about the couple of high-level Biden administration trips to Caracas earlier this year. You can guess what I feel about them, but I want to know what you think.
Foolish, dangerous, giving credibility to Maduro, telling the people of Venezuela, no matter how under the radar these visits may have been, people find out and they become known. And so they're saying, wait, we're against this guy. And here the United States thinks that he's a legitimate elected leader, when we know that his election was a fraud, and he's the one that they recognize as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. What happened to the recognition of Guaido as the legitimate leader of Venezuela? So I don't like those. I don't think that the Biden administration serve themselves well, because President Biden has talked about how he wants to be the leader of a democracy, a true democracy, and he wants democracies everywhere. Not that we're advocating regime change, but then to sit down with an illegitimate leader who used fraud to get elected, and say, yeah, let's negotiate. It sends a bad message, at the very least, for those opposition leaders who are sacrificing their lives to stand in opposition to this regime. And yet the United States is giving the cloak of legitimacy to an illegitimate leader. And those are your thoughts, I would imagine, right, Ambassador?
Well, they are. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is what signal those two trips to Caracas, as well as other instances, what signal that sent to other countries, especially in the region, and what the effect was on that. Now, I know for a fact that the Biden administration sending of those two high-level missions to Caracas and other comments have had a direct effect on Colombia and on the Petro administration. It confirmed to Petro that it was okay to open up relations with Venezuela again and go back to the somewhat to the good old days. Now, maybe surely that was Petro's intention all along, but this time he had the in effect de facto assurance that the Biden administration would not punish Colombia if Colombia took that action. Do you agree with that?
Yes, excellently put. And what does it say to all of Latin America? It says you can jail dissidents, we'll still meet with you. You can silence opposition, we will still meet with you. You can abolish the Congress if the votes don't go your way, we'll still meet with you. When you have illegitimate leaders who are then given this cloak of decency and authenticity by the United States, it tells all of the countries of Latin America, oh, so I can get away with this. Because who doesn't want to silence critics? I mean, not in a horrible way, but everybody would like to silence critics. But when you jail your critics, and when you give them prison sentences, when you take away rights from the opposition, and yet you get rewarded with a visit from a delegation of the United States of America, then the opposition is so disheartened. And the other leaders of other Latin American countries say, there are no consequences for these acts. I can do this. I can jail dissidents. I can silence opposition leaders. I can cancel elections. I can declare myself the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive branch, and no one will bat an eye. The United States will still meet with me. So we have to at least have these kinds of guardrails to say, if you're going to do that, we're not going to recognize you as a legitimate government, and we're not going to negotiate with you. But as long as we do this, other leaders will be emboldened. And that's why we have seen elections not go for the people of those countries, because Petro was elected, but wow, what a change for Colombia to have a former guerrilla leader come after so many pro-democracy, pro-US Colombian presidents. And now we have Petro, who has no love for the United States. And one of the first things he did was have a meet, congratulate Maduro, go over there, and Lula. And what a change for Colombia. And Venezuela says, wow, this is a great new day. I've got Lula, I've got Petro, I've got the new leader of Chile, and of course my great friends Diaz-Canel and Castro and Ortega. It's terrible. I feel bad for the opposition leaders. I feel bad for the human rights activists, because at the very least they need to have the United States stand with them, not with these despotic leaders. Let's stand up for what our values are even if you're alone to do the right thing, it's important to do the right thing. Let others criticize you. Go to bed at night saying, I've done as good a job as I can do, and I'm trying to help people to be free. No shame in that. Shame is in negotiating with our enemies. And Maduro does not love the United States, does not love Americans, does not want good things to happen here in the United States.
Well, so we have great reason to be pessimistic about the future of Venezuela, which
I want to be optimistic, Michael, I do, because the people are so good and the opposition is so good. But we need to stand with them. We need to be with them, not turn our backs on them.
And as we've said, what is happening in Venezuela and U.S. policy and other policies toward Venezuela have a direct effect on us, long-term, medium-term, short-term. We're on Cape Cod right now, and we see Venezuelans at the Cape Cod Mall. These are the people that have crossed the border illegally or legally. It's not going to end simply. But so many people seem to be turning a deliberate blind eye to what is happening and saying, okay, we'll have negotiations. Everything will be fine.
And I think part of what we have seen when the people stood up and they marched in the streets, and we saw those videos a few years back, and there were hundreds and thousands, and not just in Caracas. It was all throughout the country. And what happened? They were shot, they were killed, they were imprisoned, and now people are afraid, and they think the United States is not going to be with us. If the United States is not going to be with us, who will help us? So we are that shining city on the hill. And I know maybe it sounds pompous to some people that we see ourselves as that, but we really are. For some, we really are the last safeguard of these people who are protesting and who are desirous of having a positive change in their leadership. And if the United States turns their back on those opposition leaders, as we have so many times before in other countries, then they will be by themselves. And the encouragement to go out and protest, those brave leaders will still do it, but we need to stand with them, Michael. We cannot have them do this alone. And negotiations and making deals with people who do not have the good intentions that we do are gonna fail miserably and actually bring them further back than they were.
Okay, if you had a day in the White House and you had power, what would you do or say right now to the American people?
What I would do and say is that we need to form coalitions with other governments and other institutions in the outside of the United States to bring this coalition of the willing, to use an old phrase, but we need international solidarity. The United States cannot do it alone. But if we had a leader who really would use the power, and we do have power, and we do have that bully pulpit, we do have it, to go to the UN and call for solidarity for the people of Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, all of these people to band together, institutions, all of these groups to say, we want freedom, we want democracy, stand with us. That would be such a sea change, but we don't have it. We don't have international solidarity because we're not calling for it. We're not doing anything about it. We're just doing, okay, what can we do today? But we're not thinking long-term. So if I were there, I would use that wonderful podium at the United Nations where the president could have said, help us to help the people of Venezuela, to help. That's what we want. We're not saying regime change. We're saying help the people of Cuba, help the people of Iran, help the people in all of these oppressed countries say that they want to be free. Give them that platform, give them the microphone. What can you do, France? What can you do? All of these countries need to be named and shamed and say, what can you do today to help the people be free? And so that's what I would do with my magic wand, my stapler here. I would say, help the people and join us in this caravan of freedom, because I think people would do that. Leaders would do that. People respond to a clarion call. If no one else sounds the trumpet, then I will do so. And that's what the Bible tells us that worked. And I think that it can work today.
Very good. Okay, let's go to questions. Now, remember, if you want to ask a question, just click Q&A and write your question, and we'll get to as many as we can. The first is not a question. It's from Jesus Aveledo of the VNAMCHAM in Miami, who says, my congratulations to both Congresswoman Ileana and Ambassador Mike Skol from Jesus Aveledo, Miami. Jesus, thank you very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Jesus. No sé si lo conozco, but I'd like to know you. And if we did already meet, I want to see you again. Where do I hang out? Casa Cuba in South Miami. I tell my husband that esa es nuestra cocina. That's my kitchen. So we'll see you at Casa Cuba on every day. We'll be eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner there. Gracias. I wish I were in Cape Cod, but I think Miami is far superior.
Yeah. I have a question, Mike, for Ileana.
Carlos Ivan.
Please.
Yeah, so how can the Latino vote influence decisions? I mean, I think the Latino vote has been very important on the Republican Party as of recent. I mean, how can we Latinos, Venezuelans that are now legally living in the US, shape these decisions of the US government towards Venezuela, what is happening there? And not only Venezuelans, the rest of the Latino community, you know?
What an excellent question, and how timely. You're so right, Carlos Ivan, because we just saw it demonstrated less than a week ago on Tuesday. Yeah, I don't care who you voted for. I'm not here to say vote for this one, vote for that one. But the Latino vote came out in droves. I will use Florida as an example. In the Hispanic, where the Hispanics were concentrated in Florida, and those are in four counties. Ron DeSantis the governor improved his vote count by many percentage points because of the Latino vote. And I think that was a big factor in how the Democrats did not do as well. I don't care if you voted for Governor DeSantis or not. That's not my point. My point is the power of the Latino vote. I voted for DeSantis, of course. I want to clarify that. But the power of the Latino vote was shown in full force in Florida. And it was, whether it was Cuban or Puerto Rican or Nicaraguan or Venezuelan, Colombian, wow. If Latinos would band together and say, this is our candidate, what an amazing sway we would have in the next presidential election. Really, it is unbelievable, as you know, that the Latinos are now the fastest growing demographic group in the United States. It's a big chunk of the population and ever growing. So many of them are not citizens yet. We need to make them citizens. And if they're citizens, we need to get them registered to vote. 2 big steps. But once they become registered to vote, Florida showed that the Latino vote, one way or the other, can really change elections. So thank you, Carlos Ivan. I'm not advocating that you register Republican or register Democrat, do whatever you want to do, but register, become an active participant in our democracy. As they always say, democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to be a participant. You have to be in the ring. You can make a difference. Do you see how close these elections are, Michael and Carlos Ivan? They are still counting votes. Some people are going to be elected members of Congress by 200 votes. That is what's happening. So your vote counts. Please register to vote and please come out to vote.
Thank you, Ileana. Michael,
Yes.
Ileana, you just actually answered a question that was posted here, but I think I should read the question anyway.
What is it?
This is from Eva Aluce. Good morning, Ileana. Thanks for your enlightening presentation of the situation in Venezuela. My question, in your opinion, could the Hispanic American vote make a difference into helping with freedom in Latin America?
That is just perfect. And Eva, as you know, the answer is yes. If we band together, numbers and demographics don't lie. If people register to vote and then they go to vote, we're making it so easy for people to vote. Michael, Carlos, Ivan, and Eva. I mean, here in Florida, you can mail in your ballot from the safety of your of your home. You can vote early. We have like a month-long process. So we make it as easy as we can for people to vote, and still people don't vote. But we can be such a strong factor, but we need to do it. Register in whatever party you want, or don't even register for a party, non-party affiliation. You know, the independents here in Florida is a fastest growing block of voters. People are sometimes not so happy with either party. I don't care. I want you to register Republican, but register non-party affiliation. Just vote, and vote for people who do not have a voice. Vote for the people of Cuba. Vote for those who cannot vote. So we have an opportunity to change humanity one vote at a time. Excellent question, Eva. Thank you so much.
Okay, here's one from Martin Schubert. Could you please talk about U.S. oil policy and continuation of sanctions, and also sanctions on sale of bonds by U.S. holders?
Well, as you know, the United States does have a series of sanctions against different entities, whether it's banking or oil, you name it. It depends on what category you are. But when it comes to Venezuela, many sanctions are still in place. Now, the Trump administration put more sanctions on. Biden has not been too quick to undo those sanctions. And even though some Democrats had hoped that the Biden administration would ease up on sanctions, I congratulate the people around President Biden who have given him solid advice by saying, we have not seen any movement toward democracy. Political prisoners are not being let out. He is not letting U.S. businesses operate freely in Venezuela. So he has not made those free enterprise moves, no pro-democracy moves. So if he has not moved in that direction, why should we ease up on sanctions? So I hope that those sanctions, my personal belief is I hope that those sanctions remain in place. I do know this, that the sanctions that President Trump put on Cuba, for example, President Biden loosened those, but we have seen no change in the Cuban dictatorship. And we can do a little bit around the edges, but it really depends on the people of Cuba, the people of Venezuela. But they need help. They need help and solidarity from other countries, and that's where the United States can play a role. So I don't see too many sanctions being lifted by the Biden administration. We will soon see, but they have seen that Maduro has only become emboldened by the elections in Brazil, in Chile, and Colombia, and he will not move toward democracy nor free enterprise. So I see those sanctions more or less staying in place with a little change here and there.
This is something from an anonymous attendee. What leverage does the Biden administration have, if any, to push Maduro toward free and fair elections?
That is, Mr. or Ms. Anonymous, that is a great question. What leverage do we have, again, on a dictator like Maduro to ask him to have free and fair elections? We've already put sanctions, the threat of more sanctions perhaps, but as I said, he's become emboldened by the elections around him. And these are leaders who have called to congratulate him, to say, and not to say anything about Mexico. You've seen what the Mexican president did with the Summit of the Americas. He boycotted it because we did not invite Cuba, Venezuela, or Nicaragua. Well, we were inviting democracies, not dictatorships. But what leverage does the United States have on Iran? What leverage do we have on Cuba or Nicaragua or Venezuela? You know, we only have our strong word, the bully pulpit, our vote in certain international fora. So we have a little bit of sway, but we need to be stronger. We need to articulate our vision in a more forceful way in favor of democracy, freedom, and human rights. And we could have, you know, award celebrations. I'm just saying something as silly as what seems to be silly, to in absentia give awards to leaders in these oppressed countries who have stood up for freedom, democracy, and human rights. But if we just ignore them and never herald them, then that's a problem. We have op-eds that we can publish. We have votes in the United Nations. We have resolutions that we can file. We can work with the House and the Senate to say, you know, sponsor a resolution awarding the Congressional Gold Medal to this freedom advocate. There's so many things that the United States could do. We don't have much that we can do because these guys operate within their own little mafia. But the Maduro clique and like-minded dictators, they think that they will have sway in international organizations. But the United States is still respected. And we need to use that respect in order to gain support for opposition movements across our hemisphere. Use our leverage, use our voice, use our power. We're so reluctant to do so.
Okay, here's from Martin Schubert again. Will the Venezuelan debt ever be restructured, or will holders have to deal with the New York statute of limitations, which will cease payment validity next year?
I don't know that I should give an opinion on that. I don't think much will be changing about what's happening right now, whether it's the debt and forgiveness of the debt, etc. Whatever we can do to punish dictators and to help the people is what I'm for. You know, I know that there are lots of advocates for multinational corporations who can do their own bidding, and they have good spokesmen and good firms representing them. I'm not too worried about them. I worry about the rank and file people of Venezuela who want freedom and democracy. And I know that they're big guns who worry about the debt and investment. I just worry about Jose and Maria who want a better life for their kids, who want safety and security and democracy and human rights. That's who I worry about. Those big corporations still have lots of U.S. chambers to be advocating for them. I don't worry about that. They'll take care of business. I just want the people who so far don't seem to be represented by anyone to have a better voice along with corporations.
Carlos, any further comments, questions?
No more questions for me, Mike. I think it's been great. I mean, it's as always listening to you, Ileana. It's amazing, and thank you for your passion about these issues that you expressed for many years, and for helping the Venezuelan community and for helping all of the oppressed countries in the region try to find a better place. You know,
it's in my DNA. Thank you, Ivan. And let me give the viewers my my email if you want to write to me. It's kind of complicated because I'm with a firm with a funky name, but it's my first initial I, and then Ros-Lehtinen without a hyphen, Ros-Lehtinen. Maybe you could send it to them at aikengump.com. I'm not here representing Aiken Gump, but that happens to be my email address. I'm representing myself. So please write to me if you have any thoughts, and if I can answer your questions, I'd be glad to. but really the real experts, they're very nice to me and they've been lauding me. But Ambassador Skol, he knows all the players, all the hard questions should go to Michael. And Carlos Ivan, he's a big operator. He knows also. So if you want, you can write to me and I'd love to correspond with you. Pero Michael and Carlos Ivan, ellos son los que saben mucho más que yo. Pero Michael, thank you so much for your friendship, for your years of camaraderie. And I've enjoyed this, not only this hour, but I've enjoyed seeing the terrific programs that this organization has put on. And they really are remarkable. So if you are a first-time viewer, please sign up to be on this on their newsletters. They put on amazing programs, and I'm not talking about this one. They went slumming when they got me, but they have really great and people from the entire political spectrum. You will have liberals, you will have anybody coming on here and really giving thoughtful discussions of the day. So Michael, excellent programming, and I'm not talking about mine. You really have done a phenomenal job of guiding this organization and getting great speakers. So who are your next speakers?
Well, we don't have anybody right now coming up for VAUS, but we're thinking very clearly about getting back to real meetings rather than just the
in person.
Well, we're going to do both because, you
Wow.
know, it's interesting. One of the benefits of virtual meetings is you don't have to be subway distance from Midtown Manhattan. You can be anywhere in the world and attend a virtual meeting. So I think what we're looking forward to in the future is a combination. Have real meetings in Midtown Manhattan and virtual meetings sometimes.
Hey, listen, any excuse I can get to go to New York City, let me be there. Okay, so invite me back, and let's see, maybe after the talks or after the election, let's see what happens. And I'd love to go.
Very good. Yes,
I love New York.
Okay, and we love you. And given
Yo te quiero mucho.
If you keep talking like this, we'll have every single program featuring you. Do you have any last minute comments about Venezuela?
Yes, I would say this. Thank you for the opportunity, Michael. I remain hopeful. I am a hopeful person. I'm like Hubert Humphrey, who called himself a happy warrior. I am a happy warrior for freedom, democracy, and human rights. And even though it looks like right now no one is paying attention and the people are by themselves, I think that there's a lot of support. We just need a leader to say, folks, we're with you. We're going to stand with you and we're going to support you. And if we had that leader, I think that it would be better off for the world, and certainly better off for the people of Venezuela, the people of Nicaragua, Cuba, you name it. We want freedom. Who wants to live under a dictatorship? No one. We all want to be free, as the Rascals sang in the 60s. That's before your time. People all the world over want to be free.
Amen, as it's said in many venues these days. Okay, Ileana, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it on to Carlos Ivan.
Yes, thank you very much, Ileana. I mean, again, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we hope to have you again soon, even in person or remotely. But
let's see what's happening with my party this week. We have President Trump, who might announce tomorrow. We have the election of the speaker. Maybe it's Kevin McCarthy. Wow, what a crazy time. I'll be in DC tonight, and let's see what happens. I'm going to put my seatbelt on because it's going to be a turbulent ride.
Well, hope it's for the best.
Gracias.
We also thank our hardworking association team, Linda Calvet and Laurie Dominguez, for making this event possible. I mean, as always, every event, it takes time to plan and to coordinate, and they make it always possible. If you're interested in joining the VAUS, please contact our team via today's invitation. Your membership is always appreciated, and they make our work possible. Thank you all for participating, and we look forward to meeting all of you soon. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Bye, Ileana. Bye, Mike.
Muchas gracias. Cariños a todos. Gracias, Michael. Iván.